Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Seeing that quite a few people were on the brink of death, Estrella knew that she had to do something so that the medics had some time to heal everyone. Dashing towards Ikari with Nantion next to her, she swiped her hand and opened several portals around him. From the portals, long ghastly hands could be seen stretching out and trying to restrain Ikari where he stood. Humph! Scoffing lightly, a swirl of energy erupted out of Ikari as he forcefully dispelled the portal and reached towards Estrella's neck. From what he'd seen so far, she was one of the more annoying ones, as she could easily send Shiro away should he start to win. Therefore, by killing her, he ensures that they stay in here with him. However, before he could reach Estrella, Nantion blocked his path and slammed his fist against Ikari's chest. URG. Gritting his teeth, Ikari grappled Nantion's arm and tried to break it. Unfortunately for him, Nantion was long prepared. Using the momentum to move his body, he pierced his knuckles towards Ikari's ribs. Sorry to say, but I'm pretty adept in martial arts. Nantion chuckled as he charged towards Ikari once more. Since he couldn't use light, he was going to make sure that he forced Ikari into melee combat so that he couldn't attack their allies. Trading blow after blow, the deep crunching sounds of bones teetering on the brink of breaking could be heard. Furrowing his brows with frustration, Ikari pushed his palms outwards as two more Tier 6 magic circles appeared in front of him. TCH. Clicking his tongue, Nantion dodged back as the disruption mages tried to stop the spell. Once again, Ikari's activation time was simply on another level as they failed to cancel out his spells. Suddenly, two spheres of light formed above the Tier 6 magic circles and shot towards Nantion. Estrella, send them away, or else it'll be bad, Shiro shouted out. Nodding her head, Estrella immediately opened two portals and sent the attacks to a separate realm. Just as she was about to close the portal, she widened her eyes in surprise as Ikari flickered in front of her and reached for her head once more. Quickly raising up her hands so that she could block his grab, she was not able to close the portal on time. Detonating inside the realm, the light spheres started to expand rapidly. Everything that the light touched disintegrated in an instant as some of the spell was able to escape the portal. Seeing this, one of the elders tried to activate a barrier around the portal, but the barrier was shredded apart in an instant. Retreat! Nantion shouted out while helping Estrella escape Ikari's grasp. Gritting her teeth, Shiro looked at the situation and knew that things were dire. Apart from a few elders, Nantion and Estrella, most of the attack force were trying to get their health back to a stable level so that they could return to the fight. While Shiro could activate her gray skill once more, it would be a waste of a cast since Ikari could use another Tier 6 area of effect skill in order to try to wipe everyone out at the same time. Once he does, she'll need to make sure that her gray skill was ready. What can I do? She thought with a frown and quickly looked towards her status page. Briefly looking through her skills, she noticed that she hadn't used the Eyes of the Gorgon yet. While it may not affect Ikari as much as it did her, it should still provide them with a short moment of relief while Ikari's distraction. Closing her eyes, she circulated her mana according to her knowledge on how to activate the skill. Waiting for a short moment, she could feel a slight burning sensation which wasn't painful but wasn't comfy either. Opening her eyes, she focused her gaze on Ikari's neck. *KRR. Feeling a thin layer of stone being formed on his neck, Ikari snapped his head towards Shiro's direction and knew that this was her doing. Seeing a pair of mesmerizing lights that seemed to radiate from her eyes, Ikari found himself in a slight daze as the illusion of a Gorgon could be seen behind her. Sensing the sudden gap in defense, Nantion didn't hesitate to gather mana into his palm and slam it against Ikari's chest. Burst, he commanded. *Bang. The sudden impact brought Ikari out of his daze as his body was sent crashing back towards the attack force. Using this moment to activate a few of his skills to stop the Tier 6 spell from killing everyone, Nantion signaled for Keiko to attack Ikari while he was not prepared. Impotent beings! You dare stand in the way of a god. Die for your transgression! Ikari shouted out in annoyance as he raised his arm into the air. Pushing mana through his body, a barrier formed around him while a multi-layered Tier 6 magic circle could be seen flickering into existence. Seeing this, the attack force knew that this was going to be bad should it be activated without Shiro even needing to remind them. Activating their best skills that they had access to, the attack force sent their attacks flying towards Ikari, which was blocked by his barrier. While this was happening, Shiro was making some distance between her and the battlefield. TCH, what AF * king annoying barrier. The harder they hit, the stronger the defenses. Unless they can surpass the threshold, there's nothing they can do. Shiro thought with a frown. Once she was far enough from the battlefield, she slammed her arms on the ground and started to construct a huge orbital rail gun that should help destroy some of his spell circles. If the barrier has this feature, why don't you tell them? Nimue asked with a concerned expression. Because it'll do F * CK, all even if I tell them. They have two choices. Either straight up pierce that barrier with an anti-magic skill/spell, or surpass the threshold and break it forcefully. Shiro replied while crafting the base of this orbital railgun. Hearing her response, Nimue stayed silent, as that was indeed the truth. With Shiro's current state, the best she could hope for was to cancel a few spells here and there while the main attack force was responsible for the damage. Naturally, she also had her grace spell, but that was limited. Shiro, got any tips of holding this B** start off? Nantion's voice rang out through her earpiece, as she could tell that his voice was not as confident as before. Not much other than hit him as hard as you can. I'm making an orbital railgun to try to weaken his spells, but I'm not too sure on how that's going to work out. Shiro replied. I see. In that case, good luck. Hopefully we won't need your orbital cannon with what I'm planning next. Nantion smiled as Shiro was confused about what he meant. However, before she could ask him, the connection was cut off. Back at the battlefield, Nantion activated one of the skills on the earpiece and started to position everyone in a certain way. Listen up. Right now, you may have an urge to move to a different location. Follow that urge since I'll need you to be in that spot so that I can cast a spell. Nantion ordered through the comms. Hearing his order, the attack force started to follow this urge as they were split into groups of 1000s and positioned in 6 different corners. Pulling out a silver sword that was adorned with delicate engravings, Nantion sliced his palm against the blade and allowed his blood to taint the silver color. Taking a deep breath, he twirled the sword and stabbed it into his own chest. What the F * CK? Shiro shouted out in a mix of confusion and shock. Boom. Just as Nantion stabbed himself with the sword, a deep murderous aura started to radiate from his as his face turned pale. Pulling the sword out of his chest, he threw it up into the air as a magic circle formed around the blade. As the tier of the magic circle increased, Ikari couldn't help but furrow his brows at the sword. He didn't know how a mortal like Nantion got his hands on something like this, but he could sense a few traces of divinity from that sword. Soon, his guesses were correct as the magic circle upgraded to tier 6. However, it wasn't one yet. Mana surged around it in a frenzy as a 7th layer was formed. Tier 7 magic circle. Shocked at the fact that a demigod tier item was being used, Ikari forcefully activated his spell. A miniature sun appeared in the air as the night sky was lit up in a warm radiance. Genesis. Ikari commanded coldly as the sun started to descend. Sorry, I'll be borrowing your mana a little. Nantion smiled as he raised his bloodied palm towards the sun. War God Blood Ritual. After calling out the name of the ritual, several red tendrils of energy shot forth from the sword and wrapped around the sun that Ikari had created. Absorbing the mana away from the sun, the light from the sword was intensified as an illusionary figure started to form. Seeing the figure, Ikari gritted his teeth in annoyance. Damn, why does it have to be this warmongering freak? He cursed in his mind. Before he could make a move, however, he felt thousands of spells target him once more. TCH. Clicking his tongue, he swiped his hand and sent out several beams of light to intercept the spells. Unfortunately for him, before the lights could intercept the spells, several tanks activated their defense skills and blocked his attack. While this was happening, the second wave of tanks targeted him with their taunt skills. Pucci. Feeling his anger increase with every passing second, Ikari was starting to get sick of this charade. Gritting his teeth, he activated a tier 6 barrier that blocked the ranged spells before transforming the barrier into an area of effect attack spell. Pushing his hands out, the barrier expanded in an instant and slammed against the tank's shield. Asterisk crack. Shattering a few shields to pieces upon contact, Ikari was able to make some room for himself. Raising his hands towards the sword, a multi-layered Tier 6 spell was constructed. Narrowing his eyes, he was about to fire his spell when a bullet of sorts could be seen from the corner of his peripherals. SH dash. Asterisk bang. Ping. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. Bingo. Shiro grinned as she managed to break one of the more important components to Ikari's spell. Just by breaking that tiny piece of the spell, she could delay the cast time by a few moments, allowing the disruption mages to do the rest. Normally, this would have been easier for her if she had just used her hand cannons and fought him in hand-to-hand combat. That way, she could cancel out all of his spells with her reaction time. But since she was much weaker than him right now, she could only snipe his spells from afar. Loading a second bullet into her orbital railgun, Shiro looked through the scope and wanted to aim at another part of his spell. However, just as she looked through the scope, she could see Ikari's malevolent glare as warning signs rang out in her mind. Quickly tilting her head back, she was able to narrowly dodge a tiny ray of light that would have pierced her head had she not reacted in time. Jumping back, she quickly dismantled the railgun so that she could be refunded the MP used. While it was good for the first hit, Ikari will now be wary of the location, so hitting the target would be much harder. Plus, he could also attack her like he just did now, and she could be killed with a single hit. In this fight where she was heavily underleveled, she needed to be careful of what she did, or else instant death. However, it seemed like she was able to have a short period without worries since Nantion's ritual had finally finished. Standing in the air and towering over the battlefield, an illusionary image of the war god had been formed. His hair flickered in the wind as his presence felt like a mountain on the attack force. Crossing his arms, the war god looked down at the battlefield and spotted Ikari standing there with a displeased expression. To think you had actually created an avatar in this world. Are we not breaking a few rules here? The war god questioned as silence reigned the battlefield. What about yourself? Ikari retorted as the war god had actually allowed such a high-level relic to be accessible in the garden before the new age had even started. I have my means, haha. However, you must have paid quite a price to make your avatar, right? I wonder how your physical body is doing right now. The war god smiled. Even if I had to pay a big price, I can still kick your ass back to your divine realm, you warmongering piece of sh*t. Ikari snapped back as he could still remember the battle he had against this god when he first ascended into Tier 8. Regardless, I'll get my revenge now. The war god grinned and charged towards Ikari. Bracing himself with a few light swords, he was about to intercept the war god when several ice chains wrapped around his body. With hundreds of mages in the attack force fueling the same spells, it was very difficult for Ikari to escape. Not only that, but the war god was also charging at him with full force, so the best thing he could do is to just brace himself for impact. Asterisk bang. As the punch collided with Ikari's body, he could feel blood gush up his throat from the impact. Gritting his teeth, he pressed his palms against the war god's body. Sending out a beam of light to infiltrate the illusionary figure, Ikari forced his magic to start tearing away at the source of the illusion, the sword. However, before his attack could even reach the sword, the war god twisted his body and elbowed him in the side of his face, sending his body crashing down to the ground. Oi, the one who summoned me through the ritual. The war god called out as Nantion flew to his side and bowed respectfully. I'll tell you now that I cannot kill him in the time that I'm able to manifest this form. The most I can do is weaken him, the war god said with a serious expression. As he had already fought Ikari in the divine realms, he knew that killing this man was much harder than ascending to Tier 8. Unless they had something to completely erase him in one go, the fight was going to be a tedious one. Hearing that not even a Tier 7 relic could stop this man, Nantion had a frown on his face. Understood. Hearing this, the war god nodded before charging at Ikari once more. As the two gods clashed repeatedly, the attack force was in an awkward situation. It was hard to target Ikari with their spells due to the fact that he was being thrown around by the war god, so they could only watch the scene awkwardly. While this was happening, Shiro had already made another orbital rail gun in a different location and activated the camouflage function. Looking through the scope, she had prepared an extra special bullet so that the war god could inflict massive damage to Ikari's body. The bullet was made from her void star element, and the moment this bullet comes in contact with Ikari, it would form a zone of darkness around them. Hopefully, this would negate quite a few of Ikari's passive skills so that his defenses were weakened. However, Shiro knew that they were just grasping at straws now. The attack force didn't have enough power to push Ikari to the brink, while his reactions and barrier made it hard for Keiko to land a good hit. With the war god in the mix, the elders couldn't find a good time to interfere either, since it was difficult to keep up. Looking through her database for anything that she could use, she glanced past a few notes that she had made and couldn't help but widen her eyes. If they can't deal enough damage, maybe the system can. The unknown element that she had created during her fight against the Gorgon. It was forcefully canceled by the system, so she doubted that she could access it using the same method. But what if she had a different way to reacquire said element? The mythic skill stone, one that allowed her to create a skill as long as her mental image of the skill was detailed. Since she still had records of the unknown element that she had used during the fight, replaying them during the item's activations should provide enough detail for the skill to be formed. While she did say that she wanted to avoid relying on the system in case it was to disappear, their situation was dire, so doing so was necessary. I didn't want to use this so soon, but will lose if this continues. It's not a loss for me either, since the gods will have their own code. Who knows, maybe I can extract something from them in the future. Shiro thought to herself while pulling out the skill stone. Activating the stone, a blaring radiance erupted out from her as she immediately played all the records she had of the unknown element. With the sudden eruption of light, Shiro essentially made herself a giant target as Ikari's attention was drawn towards her. Sensing an ominous feeling in his heart, he dashed towards her while disregarding the war god. Since there was now a literal source of light for him to use, he was able to activate a few of his passives and teleport next to her. However, Nantion had the same idea. Flickering next to Shiro, Nantion twisted his body and slammed his heel against Ikari's ribs. "Sorry, I can't let you harm my dearest now, can I?" Nantion chuckled while making sure that Ikari didn't have the chance to harm Shiro. Despite hearing Nantion called her dearest, Shiro didn't pay him any attention, since she was more focused on making sure she didn't waste the skill stone. As Nantion was keeping Ikari busy, Keiko finally found the slight gap that she needed and flickered behind him. Activating her plethora of skills that enhanced her first strike after exiting stealth, a red glow seemed to radiate from her eyes. Touch of malice. Asterisk Pushi. Slashing across his back, a black mist seeped into Ikari's body as tattooed curses slowly spread across his skin. Feeling a restriction on his movements, Ikari glared back as blood started to drip out of the corner of his lips. "TSTS, no looking away from your enemy now." Nantion smiled and punched towards Ikari's jaw. Asterisk crunch. Hearing the sound of bones breaking, Nantion quickly used his spare hand to punch towards his chest. Asterisk bang. With a quick 1-2 combo, he was able to force Ikari to retreat for a moment. Gritting his teeth, Ikari tried to heal himself, but Keiko's attack seemed to weaken his healing's effectiveness. As he tried to look around her once more, he noticed that she had already disappeared. Clicking his tongue, he was about to activate another skill when a knee cracked against his spine. Yarji. Crying out in pain, Ikari felt his rage reach a new peak as the war god was still around. "Just F*** King die." He cursed out and swiped his hand across the air. Suddenly, a pair of angel wings wrapped around him as his wounds started to heal up. Even the curses that Keiko inflicted on him were wiped clean. Taking this moment to follow it up with a second tier 6 spell, Ikari aimed it towards the war god. Asterisk boom. Before anyone could realize what was going on, a giant sword of light cleaved down from the heavens, killing hundreds of adventurers in the attack force in an instant. Shocked at the sudden spike in the casualties, Nantion dashed towards Ikari once more. However, Ikari was prepared. After cleansing himself of all debuffs along with healing himself for a portion of his HP, he was almost back to peak fighting form. Crouching down slightly, He diverted Nantion's attack before activating a Tier 6 magic circle just inches away from his stomach. Begone, you worm. Ikari frowned and activated the spell. *TSSSSS. Suddenly, a beam of light erupted through Nantion's body as he could feel his insides being cooked by the blade. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, he stumbled back a little as his flight was cancelled. Lil Tion. Shiro shouted out in worry as she instantly activated another charge of her grace spell. As the wound healed up, Nantion quickly jumped back and took off his mask. Wiping the blood from his mouth, he glared at Ikari in wariness. Be careful out there. Don't be overconfident and make sure you aren't hasty. Shiro reminded quickly before focusing back on the skill stone. I've made a fool out of myself in front of you, huh? He chuckled before placing a palm over his heart. Activating a few skills, enchantments could be seen spreading across his body as he made sure he was quick enough to keep up with Ikari even without Keiko's curses restricting his movements. Making eye contact with the war god, Nantion gestured for the two of them to attack him at the same time. With both Nantion and the war god pressuring him with Keiko slipping in a few stabs when a gap appeared, Ikari found it hard for him to attack Shiro. Even if he teleported beside her, Nantion would do the same and force him away. Not only that, but since Shiro had used her grace skill again, most of the attack force were back to full health and could engage in the fight without worrying too much. In addition to this, all of the elders and the martial hero jumped into the heart of battle and kept Ikari busy. Understanding that it was going to be hard to avoid friendly fire with so many people in close-range combat, most of the adventurers focused on control skills, while those who could give out buffs helped enhance their abilities. Since most of the level 500s was keeping Ikari busy, Shiro could focus on the skill without any distractions. During the process, she could feel the system warning glowing in her peripherals, but she decided to ignore it after a brief glance. After all, it was the similar warning back when she had first acquired this element. Warning: Entity, Shiro, is forcefully bypassing her authority, requesting moderator's interference. Failed. Warning: Moderator evaluation. Prerequisites have been met. Use of an item is not breaking rules. Bug was resolved, but her knowledge about Error 403 was retained. Focus was not broken entirely. Sufficient information was provided to the skill stone. Entity, Shiro, will now be granted access to Error 403. Upgrade of authority level is withheld for further inspection. Moderator evaluation received. Distributing rewards. As the last notice was displayed, Shiro suddenly felt something foreign within her mana realm. A wave of information gushed into her mind as she held her head in pain. Gritting her teeth, she finally understood what she had stumbled upon during the fight against the Gorgon. Goodness, it's truly a blessing that I hadn't killed myself back then, Shiro muttered as she had a pretty good description of this element. Virus. It was a virus within the system that allowed her to extract another entity's code and attach it to her own. However, doing so was highly dangerous, and the virus could have taken her code and assimilated it to itself. The moment that happened, she would have ceased to exist. Attunement obtained. Tier: Unknown. Rank. Title gained. Title: Error code. You are an anomaly within the system. Whether it is due to luck or other variables, you were able to briefly control the Error 403 to defeat your enemy, and in the process, extract their code and obtain the eyes of the Gorgon. With this title, you now have a degree of control over Error code 403. Skill gained. Skill: Extraction. At the start of each month, you gain an extraction charge. With this, you are able to attempt to rip out an enemy's code and gain a skill from them. Depending on the difference in strength at the time of casting this skill, there may be a chance of failure. Current extraction charge: 1. Reading the description of her skill, Shiro couldn't help but grin at the possibilities behind this skill. Understanding that it was her ticket to victory in this fight, Shiro quickly hid herself amongst the snow and eyed the battle carefully. She needed to make sure that she timed it at the precise moment where Ikari was at his weakest. The moment when he is forced to activate one of his life-saving skills. Watching the battle like a hawk, Shiro waited patiently for the time where Ikari was at his weakest. There were a few moments where it looked like the case, but Shiro knew it was a bait and kept her watch. As the fight continued, the war god's figure started to grow faint. Understanding that his time was almost up, his attacks intensified, but Ikari made sure to fight defensively for now. As long as he kept up his guard, Keiko wouldn't be able to sneak in another cursed strike like before. Plus, he was able to pick out a few gaps and deal heavy damage to the attack force, reducing their numbers to less than 4,000 adventurers. Naturally, Shiro used her grace skill to keep as many of them alive as she could, but more than 2,000 adventurers still died. Of course, she kept the final use of her grace skill for the moment Nantion or Keiko were fatally injured. Things continued to grow dire, but Shiro was patient. At this point, Ikari's men had long arrived at the battlefield, but the attack force were able to hold them off. Since Ikari was more focused against the combined might of several level 500s that had received hundreds of buffs, the attack force had a rather easy time with holding off the enemies. As a few elders risked their lives to deal a heavy blow to Ikari, Keiko finally got her second chance. This time, she held nothing back as a murderous aura could be seen around her body as she broke out of stealth. Touch of malice. Striking at Ikari once more, the curses were even more potent as he immediately kneeled from the pain. Now, activating her Rift Strider skill, Shiro flickered into the heat of battle and activated her newly acquired skill, Extraction. Feeling a burning sensation on her right hand, Shiro flinched a little but reached out to touch Ikari. As her hand came into contact with his chest, the burning sensation increased as the color of her skin on her right hand turned into a dark silver with red circuit patterns. Not only that, but she could also feel this sensation traveling up her arm. While this was happening, the red circuits extended towards Ikari like strings of curses. Feeling this foreign entity trying to invade the deepest parts of his body, Ikari tried to resist, but it was futile. ARGG. The pain was searing into his mind as his body seemed to ignore his commands. Trying his best to reach out to Shiro, he wanted nothing else other than snapping that neck in half. He didn't know what she did, but his system was unresponsive. He couldn't use any of his skills or passives. Seeing this, Nantion quickly grabbed Ikari's arm and dragged it away from Shiro. He didn't know what she was doing, but he knew that this was a golden opportunity. As this was happening, he couldn't help but notice the red circuit patterns which gave him a sense of dread. Unsure as to why that was the case, Nantion ignored it for now and allowed Shiro to do whatever she wanted to do. After a few short seconds, Shiro plunged her hand into Ikari's chest and ripped out a small flicker of light in one swift movement. Before Ikari could even scream, his body started to break down into ash. Just you wait, Nitri. This avatar is done for, but I'll find you. In the next age, you'll die by my hands. Ikari roared out in anger. Sure, it'll save me the trouble of finding you myself. Next time I'll rip out your main source code. Shiro replied with a devilish smile. Watching Ikari's body turn to ash, her smile faded after he disappeared. At this point, sweat could be seen dripping down her face as she floated down to the ground. Seeing this, Nantion quickly helped her while the elders announced their victory and had the remaining attack force rescue all of the captives within the dungeon. Are you alright? Nantion asked with worry as Keiko also appeared next to her. Yeah, just a little surprised by how much this hurts. Shiro squeezed out while raising her right hand and showing Nantion the orb of light. Now that he was looking at it closely, he realized that the light was actually a huge condensed string of letters and numbers. Looking at this orb, Shiro closed her eyes and started to absorb it into her own code. Asterisk ping. As the orb shattered into the form of countless strings of code, the code started to fade into her right arm. While this was happening, the red circuits along with the dark silver color on her arm started to fade, returning her arm back to its normal state. Once the codes completely disappeared, Shiro felt a wave of fatigue crash into her mind. Stumbling back, she was about to collapse onto the floor when Nantion caught her once more. Huh, I'm embarrassing myself quite a bit today, huh? I can't even fly properly, and now I can't even stand. Shiro chuckled. Don't worry about it. If you're tired, both me and Keiko can look after you while you rest. Nantion reassured. I see. In that case, then I'll be troubling you both. Shiro nodded and closed her eyes. Picking her up into a carry, Nantion turned towards Keiko. I'll take her back to the inn with Estrella's help. In the meantime, You can look for Yuki since she was Shiro's main goal for coming here in the first place. Sure, just be careful, okay? We don't know what other dangers lurk around the place. And why? When did your level drop? Keiko widened her eyes. Since she was in Tier 5 as well, she was able to spot his level a few times and noticed that he was level 500. However, now that she saw his level again, she realized that he had lost 43 levels from that fight. It's just the price I needed to pay to summon the war god. Initially, I had lost 50 levels, but with Shiro killing the avatar, I got 7 levels back. Nan chuckled as 50 levels were nothing to him. The fact that Shiro was safe and her mortal enemy was driven back was worth the 50 levels he had spent. It would have been more than 50 levels, if not for the fact that you had already experienced quite a few pseudo-level ups. You would have been dropped all the way down to level 400. The war god reminded as his figure was on the verge of dissipating. Anyways, before I go, I wanted to give you one last warning. Since you've gone against the light god, the coming age is going to a tough one. I'm not exactly on friendly terms with him, so I don't mind fighting him once or twice. But just know that his wrath is not something you should dismiss, especially that girl you have in your arms. When she wakes up, remind her to keep an eye on everyone she cares about the moment the new age arrives. If not, they could be used as hostages against her. The war god warned. Thank you. While this was all happening, Shiro was drifting through a void of sorts with no end in sight. Looking around for anything that could be of importance, she was disappointed when all she could see was the endless void. TCH, what the hell is this place? She muttered with a frown. However, just as she said this, a blinding light filled her vision. Shielding her eyes, Shiro felt a gust of wind crash into her as her body was blown back. Twisting her body so that she could land on her feet, Shiro looked down and saw a familiar city. However, it was a little different to her memories as it seemed underdeveloped. As her body was falling through the sky, Shiro felt her vision shift, and she was now floating above a young man. Light God. Shiro frowned when she realized that this was a younger version of the light god. However, compared to his malevolent glare that he always had in his eyes, this one seemed untainted. If anything, it had closer resemblances to the young Ikari that she had seen in the trial back in Muriel. What's happening? She thought to herself. No answers came. With no choice but to watch what happens for now, Shiro leaned back lazily while giving the place a curious glance. The scene started to speed up in 2 times speed as Ikari's life started to play in front of her eyes. Yawning slightly, Shiro couldn't give a crap since she didn't really care about what happened to Ikari. However, when the sky shifted to an ominous red, Shiro's attention was drawn towards a shock-filled light hero with the glowing figure of what she presumed as the light goddess. What the hell is all of this? Ikari shouted out in confusion. The world that he knew and loved was now in the midst of self-destruction. Large chunks of land would collapse and casualties soared into the millions. The ones that he cared about died gruesome deaths while he couldn't do anything but watch. This is the future. The light goddess replied calmly. Where am I then? Shouldn't I be trying to help people? Ikari questioned with panic in his eyes. You're not here because you died. You weren't strong enough. The light goddess shook her head. What about Nitri then? Isn't she powerful? Where is she? She's not here as this does not concern her. Her fate does not end with this world. However, your fate does. What do you mean? It's simple. The life or death of his world does not affect her. The power she obtained will go to waste. Of course, unless you want to change your fate, I'll give you that opportunity. Become a hero that can save this world. Take her strength for yourself and become a god. The light goddess persuaded as Ikari gritted his teeth. Looking at the destruction caused, he decided to take the offer. I'll do it. I'll become a god and stop all of this. Ikari nodded his head. Good. The light goddess chuckled with a smile that resembled that of a devil's and waved her hand. Time seemed to rewind as he was sent back to the past. This time, however, there was a cruel light in his eyes as he vowed to take everyone's strength so that he could stop this all by himself. He knew that he wanted to stop this, so he must be the strongest. In the future, those that were stronger than him didn't do anything, so he must take their strength for himself. As long as he was undefeatable, he could affect the fate of this world. They're all EXP for me to gain, he muttered. It was also at this moment that a black stain appeared in his soul. His name tag that was once white turned into a shade of gray. He had fallen. Watching the scene of Ikari's name tag turning into a shade of gray, Shiro finally understood a little of what Ian meant when she said the word fall. Could this be the cause of the light god turning into a piece of sh*t? Shiro wondered, since the child version of Ikari she had met before wasn't as twisted as he was now. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro theorized that when you fall, your entire existence will focus around your goal, whether that be to save the world or to get revenge. During this process, there was a good chance that your intention will slowly get twisted to the point where you don't care about the cost as long as the result is achieved. An example would be when Ikari created a human EXP farm so that he could acquire the strength he needed to save the world. Of course, this was no excuse for his actions, as she was still going to kill him once she saw his main body. Shaking her head, Shiro couldn't help but wonder what would have happened should she have fallen as well. The most likely situation would probably be that she would go on a rampage in order to level up her monster title. After all, it was a title that effectively doubled her power. Once she was on the same level as the light god, she could easily crush him under her heel. Dismissing these thoughts, she glanced around her and saw that she was returned back to the void, but this time, there was a small notifications window. Skill extraction complete. Skill Miracle. When activated, a pair of angelic wings will envelop your entire body, protecting you from harm and will cleanse any negative effects. In addition to this, it will also heal you to max health. You may activate this skill once per day, and it does not cost mana to activate. Even without activating this skill, you receive the following passive effects. Plus 20% health regeneration while under any source of light. You gain the ability to teleport to any unoccupied space as long as light is present in the area. Due to the incomplete code, you will have to spend 20% of your mana to perform this action. Looking at this skill, Shiro couldn't help but raise her eyebrows in surprise. Well damn, ain't that something? I wonder what kind of skill I'll get when I extract his main body. Shiro chuckled before glancing towards the other notifications that she had received upon killing the light **starred. The first one was naturally her level up. Due to her contributions, which included healing the whole army, dealing the final blow, and so on, her level shot up from 192 to 200. Plus, she had also experienced a few pseudo-level ups which increased her stats even more. With a grand total of 600,000 free points to spend, Shiro immediately put 200,000 into both VIT and DX, increasing them to 1 million, and put the rest into INT, as that was her main stat. Name: Shiro. Race: Celestial Fae. Title: Advanced Monster. 314/1000 humans killed. Fratricide. Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Creator of Style Azura's Path. Seeker of Truths. Revolutionary. Celestial Empress EX. Benevolent Saint EX. Error code. Level: 200. Class: True Celestial Sylph Empress EX. Ascendant Snowmancer EX. HP: 231, 250, 000/231, 250, 000. MP: 1, 200, 000/1, 200, 000/000. STR: 1,900,000. VIT: 1,850,000. INT: 9,600,000. AGI: 2,800,000. Dex: 1,780,000. Def: 1 million. Total stats after calculating everything. Unassigned points: 600,000-0. Attunements: Cosmic Ice, Tier 4. Apocalyptic Lightning, Tier 4. Stygian Steel, Tier 4. Astral Rift, Tier 5, augmented with Calamity's Will. Void Star, Tier 4. Celestial Star, Tier 5. Dark Celestial Phoenix Fire, Tier 5. Boreal Wind, Tier 4. Tectonic Quake, Tier 4. Oceanic Abyss, Tier 4. Nature, Tier 5. Tier: Skills. Error. Extraction. True Celestial Sylph Empress. Elemental Breath, Celestial Mirage, Force of Elements. Celestial Raiment EX, Tier 4 Element Magic. Rift Strider EX, Celestial Empress Domain EX. Monster Skill, Rejuvenation EX, Frenzied Incarnation EX, Advanced Elemental Mastery, Spirit Assistance EX, Celestial Court Appointment, Empress Blessing, Shared Burden. Snowmancer, Nanotech Engineering Tier 4, Analysis. Frozen Hell Series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hell Fire, Borealis Lance, Frozen Chandelier. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life, Grace. Path of Ascendance. Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path, Celestial Path, Berserker Path. Sword Skills. Refraction, Sword Domain, Soul Sword. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Combust, Heavenly Constellation, Aurora, Chimera Arts, Celestial Gardens, Hollow Deceit, Hitoma, Celestial Language, Asteria's Blessing, Wrath of Stars, Eyes of the Gorgon, Miracle. With her INT stat almost reaching the 10 million threshold, her total MP value was off the charts, and it was clearly not something a level 200 should have. Plus, with her level reaching 200, she was now ready to have another class up. However, this time it was strange. Normally, she could get 2 or more choices, but she only really had one choice, with the second one being an anomaly. True Celestial Sylph Empress. Class up choices. 1. Divine Sylph Empress. 2. Eyeing the second choice, Shiro's curiosity burned brightly, and she read its description. As an anomaly within the system, you have already reached far beyond what should be achievable for your level. Your special circumstance allowed you to have 2 main classes which are both ranked at EX. You may choose to create your own class from this point on. The system will watch carefully and give you the appropriate rewards. However, do note, once you pick this choice, everything after this will be uncharted territory. Whether you are able to reach Tier 6 Legend, Tier 7 Demigod, or Tier 8 God will be dependent on yourself. Depending on the situation, you may also be able to create a skill belonging to a higher tier. Smiling at the description, it was basically what she had been aiming for all this time. Since this was going to be uncharted territory, the difficulty of this class was going to be on a whole nother level. No tips on how to class up, no notes on which items she needed. She was going to be on her own. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to first look at the first option and see how it entailed. Divine Sylph Empress. The prelude before becoming the rumored Divine Sylph Goddess. All of your skills will be enhanced, and your race will receive the Divine Servant passive, which increases all of their abilities and empowers their element with the divine property. Narrowing her eyes for a moment, Shiro wondered about what she should do. If she picked the Divine Sylph Empress, she'd be giving the spirit race another upgrade so that they could survive better in the coming age. However, if she chose the second mystery option, she was going to be free from some of the level restrictions. I've already helped the race quite a bit. Plus, choosing the second choice doesn't remove my privileges as the Empress, so it's not harming them in any way. Who knows? Maybe I'll be able to make a skill similar to what the Divine Sylph Empress offers. She thought to herself and picked the second option. Chosen. Here are the basic class up requirements. 4/1, Tier 5 Attunement. 0/1, Tier 5 Awakening Type Material. 0/1, Tier 5 Catalyst. 0/5, Tier 5 Class Relevant Materials. 2/1, Tier 5 Grade Achievements. Due to the nature of your chosen class, you do not need to complete all of these to class up if you gain the opportunity to class up. Likewise, you may not class up even after completing all of these tasks. With her next class up decided, Shiro glanced around her and wondered when she was going to be allowed back to her body. However, that seemed to be a while away as her vision shifted once more. Appearing in a familiar room filled with coffins, Shiro understood that this was the realm inside her sword, Ataraxia. Due to the host's accomplishments, you are granted the opportunity to create your own legacy. Depending on the outcome of this test, Ataraxia will receive an upgrade using the Soul Weapon upgrade as a catalyst. Should you wish to accept this opportunity, please step into the space in front of the core legacies. Oh, to think that killing a single avatar would grant me this many benefits. A mystery class up, a strange element, and the chance to upgrade my sword. Maybe I should try to piss off a few more gods and kill their avatars too. Shiro muttered with a smile before stepping into the spot that the system had mentioned. Since she was here, she might as well make the most of her time and get as many benefits as she could before going back to the real world. As she stepped into the spot, she could feel her body become weightless. MN. Raising her eyebrows, Shiro noticed that her elements seemed to be floating around her in the form of orbs. The colors matched except for the mystery element that she had recently acquired. The orb that represented the mystery element was strange. It would pulse and change shapes, but always return back to its orb form. It was almost as if something was trying to break out of the shell, but would always come just short of piercing the outer layer. You have 24 hours to craft your sword using all of the skills available to you. Your mental image of the final product must be clear, otherwise the outcome may vary. I have 24 hours to craft my sword, huh? Interesting. Shiro grinned, as this was the perfect opportunity to create the most destructive sword. One that used the mystery element as the base and attacked the core of their being. However, due to the fact that she did not fully understand how the mystery element worked and the potential it held, she would need some time to study her materials. Reaching out for the orb that represented the element, Shiro wondered if she could get a few live test subjects to experiment on. As if reading her mind, several monsters appeared in front of her, unmoving. It ranged from small monsters such as goblins to huge ones such as wyvern. Noticing that they seemed to be soulless for a lack of a better word, Shiro wondered if she could actually use this element against them. After all, it was one that retrieved their code from the system. Let's see. Since I can only extract the code once a month, maybe there's another way for me to use it as an attack. Much like soul attacks, maybe this one can directly bypass their armor and attack them at their core? While I wouldn't be able to extract their code, killing them should be a piece of cake. Likewise, if this works out, I'll be able to make some bullets that have the same properties. Shiro chuckled as there was a sadistic glint in her eyes. Plus, if she was able to harness the mystery element in an offensive way, maybe there's a chance for her to apply it in a few hobbies of hers. The first example being torture. She could already imagine how much pain this could inflict, as even the light god cried out from the damage when she activated the skill. Thinking about the agonizing faces of her enemies as they suffered from the attack caused her to giggle slightly as she immediately started to work on her new sword. ####. Meanwhile, in the divine realm, the light god conjured a mirror up and looked at his bare chest. Right over where his heart would be, a circuit-like pattern could be seen as it tried to spread to the rest of his body. However, he had already placed a seal around this spot and prevented any more damage from being inflicted upon him. The only thing that he couldn't stop was the pain it would feel with every pulse of the circuit. It was as if someone reached deep into his brain and started to pull away at his flesh. Gritting his teeth, he put his clothes back on as there was now a murderous glint in his eyes. Just you wait. The first thing I'm going to do when the new age arrives is kill you on the spot. He scowled with seething fury. Dismissing the mirror, he was going to invade a few quest dungeons to see if he could find a better avatar than Lysandra for his daughter. Watching him leave, a woman chuckled as she laid on the bed. If Shiro was here, she would recognize her as the previous light goddess, not Ikari's daughter. How far will he stray? How far will he go to defy his fate? The light goddess thought while closing her eyes once more. ####. After Nantion carried Shiro back to the inn, the rescue operation continued without a hitch. Killing the guards and freeing the captives, they managed to save a grand total of 550,000 captives, with quite a few that were in a class. Some that were reported to be missing or killed were found after a quick scan of the guild database. However, despite the fact that they had saved a lot of people, the attack force did suffer a huge number of casualties that resulted in them only having 3,200 members left from the initial 6,000. In addition to this, a few of the elders had also suffered near-fatal wounds during the fight and were saved by Shiro. Keeping a note of this in their mind, they decided to repay Shiro for her help should she require it in the future. Sending Nantion a message about their decision, they started to make their way back to their branches before the government started asking about their identities. While everyone was cleaning up after the battle and making a note on who was saved, Keiko searched around the main base for Yuki's whereabouts. After all, she was their main target for this rescue mission. Unfortunately, even after searching the entirety of the main base and even discovering a few vaults along the way, she was not able to find Yuki at all. Sending a message to Nantion about this problem, Keiko waited to see if he had anything that might help them track Yuki down. Nantion, Do you have anything that might belong to Yuki? If you have that, I'll be able to use one of my items to track her down. Seeing this response, Keiko immediately told him about the messages that she had sent out to inform her of Shiro's situation. Nantion, that would work. Come to the inn, and I'll give you the item. I don't exactly want to leave Shiro alone when she's in this state. Keiko, sure. Asking Estrella to escort her out of the dungeon, Keiko made her way to the inn and got the item from Nantion. This is the essence tracking incense. Burn the item belonging to the person you want to track, and it'll lead them to you. Keep note that you should use this inside the dungeon since it wouldn't track them if they're in a different dimension. Nantion explained as he handed her the incense. I see. Is there a time limit to the tracking? Keiko asked. 20 minutes. It tracks for 20 minutes, and it'll wear off after that. Okay, keep an eye on Shiro, okay? Keiko smiled and started to walk away. At this point, she trusted Nantion to look after Shiro since he took several near-lethal blows in order to keep her safe. Not only that, he had also sacrificed a lot of his levels just so that we could even out the playing field. Making her way back inside the dungeon, she burned the letter with the incense and a faint trail of light could be seen leading back to the main building. She was in there? But didn't I just check it earlier? Keiko muttered with a frown before dashing towards it once more. Following the trail, she started to navigate through the building with ease. This eventually led her to the back of the building where she could see what seems to be the core of this entire place. Looking around the room, she couldn't spot anyone, but the trail was telling her to go behind the core. Furrowing her brows, Keiko continued to follow the trail. Destroying any wall that blocked her, she had to fend off a few barriers before she finally reached a hidden room. Within the hidden room, a giant glass column could be seen as there were several figures sealed inside the glass. Recognizing Yuki to be one of them, Keiko was about to shatter the ice when Estrella stopped her. What are you doing? Keiko asked coldly as Estrella only shook her head. This is the fuel cell for the dungeon. Her mana is being used to power this place. If you destroy it, the dungeon will collapse down on everyone, killing us in the process. With how the Empress described the human EXP farm, I'm guessing the man would have gotten the EXP once they died. He's essentially killing two birds with one stone. Estrella explained as Keiko gritted her teeth. If they destroyed the glass, the dungeon would kill everyone. If they didn't destroy the glass, Yuki and the people being used as the fuel would die regardless. Estrella, I got a crazy thought. What if we use Shiro's realm node as an emergency exit? We'll evacuate everyone, and once they're out, me and you teleport these people out of the glass and teleport out using the node. Keiko suggested. Hearing her suggestion, Estrella frowned. If we're slow, we'll be killed. Don't worry, I've got a plan. Keiko smiled since escaping dangerous situations was her forte. As long as she did everything correctly, she'll be able to save everyone in the glass without a single casualty. Sigh. Scratching her head in annoyance, Shiro looked at the broken corpse in front of her and frowned. She was currently struggling to utilize the new mystery element, as all of her attempts would just result in brute force. This was the complete opposite of what she wanted since her goal was to have a sword that ignored defense. I guess it is a bit tough for me to make something like that. Maybe I should mix it with some other elements. She muttered while glancing at the element orb. Crossing her legs, she rested her chin on her left palm while her elbow was on her knee. What to do? After all that experimenting, I only have around 8 hours left. Closing her eyes, she thought about any potential synergy between her elements. For me to create a defense-ignoring skill/sword, my nanobots are probably the best choice. Though, they're not exactly elements since I don't have an attunement for the… Wait a minute. Despite having access to nanobots and them technically being an element I can use, I don't have an island for them? Plus, the class was man-made to begin with, so maybe I need to make the attunement? Shiro raised her eyebrows in a sudden turn of realization. However, despite this realization, she needed to first understand how to make it an attunement. From what I know, an attunement is when an elemental island is created from that element inside your mana realm. It joins up with your mana links and constantly fuels mana through them, allowing them to be used at any moment. But with my nanobots, they don't have the same treatment. In fact, if I had to describe it, it would be more akin to me being the island itself. Mana passes through me, and I create the element. If I make a proxy/island to do this for me, there's a good chance for the system to recognize it as an attunement. Though, I can't help but feel that there's more to it than that. If all I had to do was to create an island, there would be plenty of attunements to go around the place. Shiro thought to herself, unless it was a special circumstance, you were stuck with the element that you started with. Hence why it was rare for a person like her who had acquired multiple elements for her to use at will. For her to try to make a new attunement with her nanobots, it was akin to defying the natural order. Snowmancer is already a class that wasn't supposed to exist. Since I'm breaking the natural order, I might as well go all in. No point in finishing things in a half-assed way. Shiro grinned as her mana surged. Even though she couldn't access her mana realm in her current state, she could still manipulate her mana. Therefore, as long as her control was up to par, she could remotely create an island and obtain a new attunement for her sword. Spending the next few hours meditating on the spot, while focusing on controlling her mana, Shiro's mana realm started to shift as a new island was slowly being created. Meanwhile, Nimue could only sit dumbfounded in the middle of her mana realm. During the fight, a foreign island appeared in her mana realm, one that would glitch out occasionally and flicker between forms. Sometimes it was a fiery hellscape, while others it was an island made of code. It was even an island of mist at one point. Frankly, Nimue didn't want to approach the island at all costs since she felt dangerous just being remotely near it. Understanding that the island represented an element that could tear out the code of a being from the system, Nimue wanted nothing to do with it, even if it was an ally. However, just as she was finally getting used to the presence of this island, another island started to form as the mana condensed together into a mass of nanobots that would pulse with life. What the F***ck are you even doing, Shiro? If you're unconscious, stay unconscious. Why the hell do you have to create random crap even while you're recovering? Nimue cried out in bitterness as her temporary home was becoming more and more dangerous. If she approached the fire island, she'd be hurt as her water body would slowly evaporate. While it wouldn't kill her, it was still less than pleasant. The same would happen on the other islands with varying degrees of harm, but the only exception is nature and oceanic abyss. Now that Shiro's mana realm had 2 additional occupants that felt more dangerous than friendly, Nimue decided to permanently take refuge in either the oceanic abyss island or the nature island. I'm going to make sure I have a good talk with her later. There are spirits living in her body after all. What if Addie accidentally walked to the new islands? Nimue frowned before focusing her mind back on making sure Shiro's body was in tip-top condition. Heis, I suppose I am still freeloading after all. She sighed. As Nimue continued to make sure Shiro's body was in good condition, the new island started to grow in size as it was now equal to the total land mass of 3 islands. Created from nanobots, the surface of the island was completely metallic. Swords, bows, guns, and other weaponry were sticking out from the ground as if they were grave crosses at a church. Pieces of what would be an orbital cannon would be the foundation of a mountain, while lightning would flicker through the island. However, despite the island being created, Shiro still didn't get the notification for the attunement, as she could only sit in wonder as to why that was the case. I know for a fact that I'm so close now. I'm just missing that final breakthrough that I need. Shiro thought with frustration. She could faintly feel the presence of the island, so she knew that she was successful with the creation. But the fact that the system still hadn't recognized it made her go mental about what she was missing. It was akin to having OCD and seeing a picture that was tilted to the side, but not being able to do anything with it. The mere thought of her being so close, but not being able to accomplish what she wanted to frustrate her to no end. At this point, it had just reached the 22-hour mark. With only 2 hours left to create her sword, Shiro couldn't help but wonder if she was ever going to complete this on time. Am I going to fail? She wondered before shaking her head and dismissed the thought. Rather than humoring the idea of failure, I'd rather spend the remaining time thinking up anything I can do in order to achieve my goals. Quickly scrolling through her list of skills along with the ones in her database, she started to experiment once more, but this time it was akin to randomness along the lines of, if I combine this skill with that, would the outcome be something desirable? Would it have synergy? If the answer was yes, she would try it out. However, despite finding out a few interesting combinations, she couldn't find anything that matched what she required. Okay, Let me go back to the basics. For me to use an attunement, I channel my mana through the island. For the elements I receive from spirits such as Azul, they provide a bit of the mana required through staying on the island. As for Ian, who helped me obtain Astral Rift, and Lysandra, who helped me obtain Celestial Star, the contract between us allows for this to happen, meaning they're the proxy for me to actually access the elements. Maybe the missing link is a proxy? I need a proxy for my attunement to actually work. Shiro muttered while looking down at her hands. Thinking about it for a moment, an idea appeared in her mind. Soul Sword. It was a sword that was a crystallized form of her soul. Since she was now a spirit, her sword could be the bridge for her to become the proxy of her own attunement. After all, the source of her power as a Snowmancer came from nanobots. Without them, it was like asking a chef to cook without ingredients. It wouldn't work. With her left hand, she summoned her soul sword. If this doesn't work, it's back to the drawing board, I guess. Shiro chuckled before starting the experiment. As time passed, Shiro managed to draft up a few decent prototypes despite the myriad of failed ones. These 5 prototypes gave her a similar feeling to when she used her other attunements, such as the Void Star. Understanding that she needed to make sure they worked, Shiro started to test them out against a target and see if the element could kill the target without brute force. The first 3 were failures as she needed to destroy the armor of the target first. Shaking her head, she proceeded with the 4th prototype. Looking at her soul sword that now had a metallic handle and guard, she took a deep breath and hoped that it would work. The test subject in question was the armored wyvern that boasted an impressive defensive stat. Its main skill was to reflect the damage it took back at the dealer, provided that the wyvern was alive, of course, and their fighting tactic was to fight a battle of attrition. If she could bypass his armor and damage his internals without needing to brute force her way through, her prototype could be further developed. Bringing her sword to her side, she narrowed her eyes and used the Takamikazuchi technique. Lighting flickered along her body and into the blade as she dashed towards the subject in an instant. Swiping her sword against his armor, she caused a faint white slash mark that did 0 damage to him. However, excitement could be seen in her eyes as she immediately snapped her fingers. *KRK. Breaking out of his body, several tendrils of nanobots could be seen devouring his flesh. With every piece of flesh devoured, more nanobots would take their place. Unless they wanted to severely harm themselves, the nanobots would eat every part of their body until they died. Finally, Shiro cried out in happiness as she smiled in excitement. Since no one was here to see her do this, she didn't mind embarrassing herself like this. After all, she had finally got a working prototype that could act as her proxy for the element. Cough. Shaking her head, she quickly calmed herself down since there was more for her to do. Unfortunately, she couldn't wipe the smile off her face as she proceeded to bring out more armored wyverns. After all, she needed to make sure the prototype was consistent. It wouldn't be much of an attunement if it suddenly stopped working in the middle of a fight after all. Testing it on 10 more armored wyverns, Shiro's face started to hurt a little from how much she was smiling. You have achieved an incredible feat. Nanotech attunement created. Nanotech, a special attunement created by the only remaining Snowmancer. This element is specifically designed to ignore all kinds of defenses through consuming and multiplying. If they have a mana barrier, the nanobots will consume the mana in order to multiply. If they have armor, the nanobots will slip through the armor and feast on the flesh. Title achieved. Attunement Creator, Nanotech. As the creator of the Nanotech attunement, you are able to control it at will. This attunement will always be 1 tier above your actual tier. If you're tier 4, the attunement will be tier 5. If you're tier 5, it will be tier 6. Reading the title description, Shiro couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. If this is true, then does it mean there's a chance for me to gain a tier 9 attunement if I reach tier 8 god? Shiro thought with surprise. Should that be the case, she had essentially discovered a limit-breaking skill that might let her reach the unknown domain of tier 9, if there is such a thing. While in the midst of her daydream, she glanced towards the time she had left in the trial to make a new legacy and noticed that she only had 42 minutes left. *T. Quickly grabbing her soul sword that was now enhanced with the nanotech attunement, Shiro reached out for the mystery element orb. Closing her eyes, She controlled her mana and tried to fuse the two together as they had similar properties. However, with just 42 minutes left, it was not enough time for her to create the heaven-defying sword that she had wanted. Time's up. The legacy shall now be created. Nanotech Legacy, exclusive to Nanomancers. Whenever you attack with the sword, a stack of nanobots will invade their system. Depending on how powerful they are, there's a chance for the nanobots to be destroyed by their mana. Weaker opponents only require one stack of nanobots to kill, while those stronger or larger may be more than 50 stacks of nanobots. And be excellent. Due to this legacy, Ataraxia will now experience an upgrade. Ataraxia, Celestial Sword of Spirits, Red Plus, Athera, the Celestial Devourer, Black. Athera was similar to Ataraxia in terms of stats, but it was the skills that truly set it apart, especially its named skill. Athera Activation Option 1. Your sword enters a frenzy, desiring to consume all the enemies in your path. When you're near a meal, you experience the following effects. Plus 100% AGI, plus 80% STR, plus 80% Dex. Along with the effect, Tenacious Hunter. Once you make your mind on killing your enemy, a red tether will appear between you and them. Until you've killed them, this tether will not go away. When you're chasing the tethered target, you gain an additional 50% boost in speed. Upon killing the target, you obtain a portion of their highest stat. Your enemies will suffer the following effects. Minus 30% AGI, minus 30% STR, minus 30% def. Along with the effect, Fear of the Hunter. Dread fills their mind as their doom approaches. Their movements become sluggish and their stamina will be used at a reckless pace. Their decision-making is impaired as they fear your presence. Cost, not applicable. Duration, 10 minutes. Cooldown, 2 hours. Backlash, you suffer from 60% muscle fatigue and a temporary decrease in all of your stats. Minus 30%. Athera Activation Option 2. Your sword enters a frenzy as you're surrounded by enemies. So many meals, but so little time. You can only eat so much, so why don't we take a single lethal bite out of everything? When you're surrounded by more than 10 enemies, you receive the following effects. Plus 60% damage resistance, plus 60% VIT, plus 60% AGI, plus 60% health regeneration, plus 50% lifesteal, plus 50% control spell resistance. In addition to this, the values are increased depending on how many enemies you face. For every additional enemy after 10, they are increased by 0.1%. Example, if you're facing 15 enemies, you receive plus 60.5% damage resistance. Cost, not applicable. Duration, 1 hour. Cooldown, 5 hours. Backlash, you suffer from 80% muscle fatigue and a temporary decrease in all of your stats. Minus 60%. Looking at both options, Shiro couldn't help but nod her head in appreciation. While she didn't make a sword that could just straight up Alt plus F for them from the system, this was a good alternative. Plus, there was also a second passive that worked well with her runes. One that reminded her of Een. Gluttony. For every enemy you kill, you store up a certain amount of essence. This essence can be used to replace the durability used when activating your celestial runes. A single point of essence is equal to 1% of durability. The more times you reach the maximum threshold of essence, the higher this threshold becomes. Example, if your maximum essence is 10, after reaching that number multiple times, it will increase to 15. Current maximum essence, 50. Stored essence, 0. Thinking about this passive, if she was to reach 100 maximum essences, she could essentially use the Lyrae rune twice using the sword. Lyrae Plus, increase health regen massively. The lower the current HP count, the higher the regeneration. Secondary option, sacrifice all durability to regenerate max HP. With this, she has another charge of her emergency max health potion. With how many health regeneration skills she had now, Grace, Lyrae Plus, and Rejuvenation, she was the textbook definition of a cat with 9 lives. Just one that can F***CK your SH**T up, disappear if things get tough, and generally a pain in the ass. Literally. Shaking her head, she figured that it was about time for her to start expanding her influence when she leaves this place. First thing is to deal with the Shadow Temple, and the next would be to confront her parents. After all, they must be worried about her safety since she didn't exactly leave on a good note when she left the house as Kuromi. Maybe I should take them out for a meal and apologize after showing them that I can also use martial arts to a good standard? Shiro thought with a smile. Thinking back to her parents, a warm feeling started to appear in her heart as she couldn't wait to see them again. Slowly opening her eyes, Shiro saw a familiar ceiling and recognized it to be the one in her room at the inn. Just as she was about to sit up, she felt something fall on her. Uff. Looking down, she saw Addie sitting on her stomach with a pouting face. Addie, she muttered in confusion. Looking to her side, she saw a yawning Izul who had just woken up. Shiro, you're awake. Izul widened her eyes in surprise. Quickly standing up, she ran out of the room. Soon, people started to flood into her room to check up on her. Damn, in one trip through China, you've already been knocked out cold twice, and both times you've been unconscious for a few days. Honestly, if I was to keep traveling with you, I don't know if my heart can take it. Nantian chuckled. Oh, in what way? The kind that likes me more or the kind that worries about the shenanigans you get into with me around? Shiro smiled as she decided to humor him a little. And if I say both? All right. First thing after waking up, and you're already flirting. Keiko rolled her eyes. Well, a thorn in my side had just been removed. Why can't I be happy? Without the light B** starred around, there's not much I need to worry about now. Shiro replied while sitting up. Holding Addie in her hands, she let Nimue out of her mana realm. Please, let me back in. I want to sleep some more. Nimue sighed. Emin, how come you're so worn out? Shiro furrowed her brows. Do you know the sheer amount of *T I had to deal with in your mana realm? Not only did 2 islands suddenly appear, but your mana was doing all kinds of crazy. I had to make sure your body was okay. Nimue replied as her smile twitched after seeing Shiro's nonchalant expression. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I can give you a table to flip. Didn't you say you were going to run out of tables? Shiro smiled and created a table from nanobots. As she did this, she immediately discovered the effects of actually having a nanotech attunement. Compared to her creation speed before, this was a few times faster. While it may look no different to other people, Shiro knew how much impact that could cause in a high-intensity situation. Looking at the floating metallic table, Nimue sighed and grabbed hold of it with both her hands. If you need me, give me a shout. I'll just be outside flipping this table, Nimue said before leaving the room. Laughing softly, Shiro glanced towards Keiko. So did you manage to find Yuki? She asked. Yeah, we did. However, she's just recovering right now since her mana was drained and her body suffered from mana deficiency. Keiko nodded with a smile. I see, that's good. Shiro nodded before looking towards Nantian. So what's your plan now? I've already finished my business in China. She asked. That quick to dismiss me after utilizing me? I'm hurt. Not exactly. I'm just asking since I know for a goddamn fact that you were injured in that fight. Do you honestly think I believe that you'll be fine after summoning a tier 7 being? Even if it was just an avatar for a short period of time. Shiro raised her eyebrows. Asterisk cough. It's fine. I only lost a few levels. I'll get them back after dash. Don't listen to him. He would have lost 100 levels if not for the fact that he had already done a few pseudo level ups. He's level 450 right now. Keiko rolled her eyes as Nantian gave her a side glare. Don't glare at my cousin and you lost 50 levels. Shiro raised her eyebrows. Yes. Nodding his head, Nantian couldn't help but feel like Shiro was lecturing him like a mother who had just found out that their child did something naughty. Asterisk sigh. First priority would be for you to get your levels back and reach tier 6 before the new age arrives. Best case scenario would be tier 7 demigod, but to be honest, I'm not sure how divinity works with the system. I've been tier 6 before by accident and never actually gotten close to tier 7. Hell, I only found out about it not too long ago. Shiro shrugged. MN, don't worry. Due to the properties of a few passive skills that I have, I can gain a certain amount of EXP through meditation. Of course, the best choice would still be for me to get it through killing, but finding level 500 monsters aren't exactly easy, and each of them are hard to kill. Nantian chuckled. Fair enough. However, you must promise me that you'll focus on getting your levels back, okay? I've mentioned this a few times, but we don't know when the new age will arrive. Only that it's going to be soon. Shiro reminded. Haha, don't worry, I'll be cautious. Nantion nodded. Talking a little more about what had happened after the fight, Shiro was informed that she had become somewhat of a celebrity in the public eye. Confused as to why that was the case, Shiro searched up some news and saw a few interesting titles. From breaking a man's jewels to saving numerous captives, is this a change of heart? What is she going to do next? Big to bigger, level 200 kills level 500 with a devastating final blow. Everyone beware, Kuromi is no longer hindered by level. Feeling a vein burst while looking at these titles, Shiro didn't mind so much now that the light hero had been dealt with. Naturally, there were a few others that might be a danger, but with how many extra lives she has and Estrella's assistance, it should be a piece of cake to escape their grasp. Plus, now that she could extract their code, she was actually welcoming the level 500s to come. Anyways, what about you, Keiko? What are you planning now? Shiro turned to Keiko. Well, I'm going to be heading back to the front lines with Kiyomi since her level is a bit low considering the threat that we have just faced. I'll be taking her to kill a few demon soldiers and securing our hold on a few of the land we have claimed. Kiyomi agreed to this, and she's been getting red. If you want, I can get her over here since she's currently looking after a Yuki along with the other captives that suffered from mana deficiency. Keiko replied. I see, that's good. Keep an eye on her, okay? Shiro smiled. Of course. So what about you, Shiro? What do you plan to do? Keiko asked. Well, I need to pay the Shadow Temple a visit since it has something to do with Yin's background. After that, I'll probably be looking for Mom and Dad. I haven't seen them in a long time, so I'm missing them a little. Plus, I did basically die after arguing with them, so it's been quite impactful in a few ways. Shiro smiled while glancing down with a smile. Ho ho, perhaps I should stick around some more. If you're going to see your parents, maybe I should meet them too. Nantion chuckled. Oi. Because they helped me when I was younger, remember? You took me to them and they helped me. What were you thinking of instead? Could it be that you thought I was going to meet them as an in-law? Nantion chuckled as Shiro paused. Fair enough. They are your lifesavers in one way or another. She nodded her head. Of course, with how Nantion had been, she had honestly been expecting him to be a bit shameless. Though she wasn't going to confirm that thought. Instead, she was going to turn the other way and ignore it like all people should. Since I've been stuck in bed for quite a while now, I should probably get some exercise. Are there any powerful monsters roaming the place or high-level dungeons? I want to test out a few of my new toys. Shiro asked with a smile. Naturally, she was talking about her newly upgraded sword, Athra. After all, for a black-grade weapon to land in her hands, the system was practically begging for her to go on a massacre. Well, there is news of a high-level monster roaming around the east of China. A few of the villages have been damaged, and an elimination quest has been handed out through the sect. Nantion replied. Oh, what's the reward? Nantion smiled. I'm feeling quite generous today. I'll do it for free. So where do we need to go? Shiro asked immediately as she hopped off the bed with Addie in her arms. She hoped that it would be somewhere secluded so that she could test out her full power without the use of berserk skills that cripples her body. After all, the last time she tried to do that, she caused a bit of damage to the border. Just a bit of damage, nothing more. If the guards were here, they would be shouting out lies. Getting herself some breakfast, Shiro made her way to the room, holding those that were suffering from mana deficiency. She had also brought Nimue and Izul back into her mana realm since they wanted to rest some more. Seeing the pale face of her friend, Yuki, Shiro couldn't help but sigh. Were the healers not able to do anything about this? She asked. Somewhat. They were able to stabilize their condition and heal them a little, but due to the nature of mana deficiency, the healers could only let them heal naturally. Nantion replied. I was able to heal Azul out of her mana deficiency though. Shiro frowned. Well, you are a special case after all. Your healing spells are rather unique in that way. Maybe you'll be able to wake them up sooner? If you want, I can get one of the sect healers to come to do a checkup after you try to heal them. Nantion suggested. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro nodded her head. Grabbing a chair, Shiro sat next to Yuki before activating her Fire of Life. Since Grace had limited charges, she didn't want to be using that when she could be using her Fire of Life. Plus, there aren't more than 100 people here, So her grace could only heal one person at a time, which would be a waste, as she only gained one charge per day. Right now, she had 7 charges with her skill, so she could guess that she's been out cold for 6 days or so. After all, she used 3 out of her 4 charges in the fight. Activating her skill, analysis, her eyes shifted in color as she examined the mana movement within Yuki's body. A little troublesome, but nothing I can't deal with. Shiro thought to herself, since it wasn't as annoying as her broken links. Her mana flow was still there, but it was just hindered a little due to her passages shrinking a little from the mana deficiency. As long as she revitalized the specific passages, Yuki should wake up sooner or later. Focusing her mind on controlling her mana carefully, Shiro started to heal her passages one by one. Standing by the side, Nantion had a small smile on his face and took another picture. Sending the serious and hard-working side profile to Lyrica, he got another thumbs up back as a response followed up by a message. Lyrica, she's finally awake? It's been almost a week now, hasn't it? Nantion, yeah, the first thing she does is wonder what else she should do, haha. We'll be going to the east of China soon to slay a monster. Lyrica, not even a single break? Damn, are you sure she's not overworking herself? Nantion, don't worry. She calls this a bit of exercise after sleeping for a while. Also, how's Aram and Lysandra doing? Since Shiro just reached level 200, the two of them should have received quite a boost, huh? Lyrica, I don't want to talk about it, nor do I want to imagine how much mana Shiro has now. Like what the actual F***CK is wrong with her stats. Do you know how much MP Aram got in an instant? Enough to suddenly vaporize all the monsters in the dungeon. As for Lysandra, let's just say her situation has gotten a bit worse. Even though the head priest was trying to help us, the other churches from around the world are now looking for Lysandra, but we've got it covered. Say Shiro. Nantion called out. MN, how much mana do you have now in total? He asked. With or without any skills stacked up? Shiro tilted her head. Both. Well, without skills, I got a base value of 1.2 billion. With a few berserk skills stacked up, I'd say a minimum of 5 billion, as some of them doubles my stats. Shiro replied nonchalantly. Listening to this, Nantion couldn't help blink in disbelief. Wait a minute. 1.2 billion. Yup. And you're only level 200? Yup. What the F***CK? Nantion cursed as Shiro was rather surprised. Oh, I don't hear you curse often. What's wrong? Shiro asked. Nothing. I'm just wondering if I picked the wrong class. I honestly don't understand how you have 1.2 billion points of mana by level 200. Nantion sighed. Monster title, it doubles my stats, you know. Shiro giggled softly since this title was basically the main cause of her insane stat values. Alright, so unfair. Nantion smiled. Get used to it. Life is unfair to begin with. Plus, you didn't need to die twice for this now, did you? Shiro grinned. True. Nantion shrugged before typing on his phone. Nantion. She said she has a total of 1.2 billion points of mana. Even without her monster title, it would be around 600 million. Lyrica, what the F***CK? Nantion, exactly what I said. While Nantion was on his phone, Shiro had finally finished healing Yuki's mana passages. However, despite this, she still needed to rest, so Shiro moved on to the next patients. After a short while, she had finally healed all of those with mana deficiency. I'm guessing that they should be waking up in a day or so. It would be good for a healer to check them out properly, though since I'm not a medic. Shiro shrugged. Well, considering the healing skills you have, it'd be wrong not to call you a medic, no? Not quite. It's kind of like having a healing potion. Just because I can force feed it to someone in order to heal them, doesn't mean I'm a healer. While I do have the skills and elements to heal people, my knowledge on the subject isn't as broad as proper healers. Calling me one is just overestimating my abilities. Shiro shook her head. I suppose that makes sense. Nantion nodded his head. Anyways, I'll wait around for Yuki to wake up. After that, we can start making our way to the east of China. Sure. Nantion nodded his head and decided to sit down to cultivate for a while. After all, he needed to regain some of his lost levels. While this was happening, Shiro sat in the room with Addie in her arms. Since she had nothing else to do for now, she decided to go online and see what's been happening with the Shadow Temple. Just as she was about to go on an article, she noticed that Nantian had put his mask back on while cultivating. Raising her eyebrows, she was about to ask him a question but decided not to since he was concentrating. You know, just because I'm cultivating doesn't mean I don't know what's happening around me. Nantian chuckled. I was just wondering why you like having your mask on often. Don't you want to show the world your handsomeness? Shiro joked, as Nantian only shrugged. Who knows if one of these patients falls in love with my face after waking up? He smiled while taking off his mask. Of course, if you wish to see my face while I'm cultivating, then I don't mind leaving it off. Won't that distract you, though? Shiro raised her eyebrows. I'm distracted whenever I'm near you to begin with. It doesn't matter if the mask is on or not. I just prefer it on since it's rather creepy to have a bunch of girls staring intently at my face every day. Though I won't complain if you stare at me more often, okay? He smiled before closing his eyes again. Shaking her head, Shiro gave him one last glance before focusing back on her phone. However, she couldn't help but compare him with the little beggar she had met when she was younger. To think someone like him would actually grow up to be so handsome. Shiro thought with mild amusement. You think he's handsome? Nimue raised an eyebrow. Well, duh. Just because I don't want to get into a relationship while everything is going on doesn't mean I can't admire beautiful things, you know. If he's handsome, then he's handsome. Shiro replied with a shrug. I never said anything about relationships, and in a single sentence, you've basically said that you admire Nantian, he's beautiful, and that he's handsome. Nimue snickered. Oi, don't twist my words. Shiro frowned. Ever heard of a thing called the Freudian slip? Nimue grinned. What's that? It's when you accidentally reveal your subconscious thoughts by accident. Perhaps you like him a little more than you expect? Hell no. Shiro shook her head, but couldn't help but glance at Nantian once more and frowned. I don't think. I heard that. No, you didn't. Ignoring her problems once more, she focused on her phone with the occasional glance towards Nantian.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.